Good afternoon, this is Brother Darren, and I'm here today conducting an interview with Martin Stevens. Martin is an author, a mentor, a motivational speaker. Um, I've shared a couple of his videos on Conscious Corner, and he's also a spoken word artist. So we're having a dialogue or a bit of an interview today in reference to his book, Raising Up Role Models. The Godparents Guide, which is an ebook. Activation 50, that one is in particular. That's the new ebook, and he also has a Accelerator 100 ebook. So one of my reasons for wanting to interview Brother Martin is I know him personally. I've observed that he displays a type of character, drive, and type of model towards mentoring and raising up role models within our youth and the community, which is so needed in the community and when looking at several community issues. So I'm going to start and ask Brother Martin some questions now. So Brother Martin, what's the name of your book again?
Raising Up Role Models.
Okay. And what inspired you to write this book?
Great question. The inspiration for this book came from my own awakening of how important the role of a godparent is.
Right.
To take it back a bit further, I have 3 sons at the moment, but when we only had 2 sons, my wife and we were considering whether or not we would try again for a 3rd child in the hope that we would maybe have a daughter. As we waited and waited, for financial stability and various other things, it seemed like the time was rolling on, and it seemed like we might not actually be at the right place to try again for a 3rd child. And it was during that stage that I said to myself, okay, so you know what? If we're not going to try again, I actually have 5 goddaughters that I could be actually playing a good father figure role to. And it was that awakening that made me say, you know what, let me be that better role model and godparent to them, and my other godson as well, and see if I could document it and just be consistent in their life and maybe turn this into a book.
Fantastic. So as you said, essentially the inspiration came from your godchildren, and being in that position to realize you could contribute for them when obviously trying for a child was sort of not successful. Is that correct?
That was correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And what are your hopes for this book?
My hopes for this book ultimately is that every godparent in the Western world gets their hands on a copy, so that they can fully understand the importance of the role. Really, don't get me wrong, not every godparent out there is not in contact with their godchild. There are many godparents who are not only in contact with them, but are playing a very active and involved role with their godchildren. But sadly, there are many more who are not actively in connection with their godchildren. And this is for one of many reasons. One simple example is that, from the point of the parent naming who they want to have as a godparent for their child, the godparent feels honored, accepts the role. They get the date of the christening, they attend the christening, they stand there at the pulpit before the altar. They're ordained, if you like, for want of a better word, as the godparents for the child. They feel that their position is one where they are a type of second parents for the child should anything happen to the parents.
Yep.
And more often than not, nothing does happen to the parents as far as their mortality goes. So they kind of feel like, okay, their role is a bit redundant, They ease off, only checking in every now and then for the child's birthday or Christmas, and their role seems to fizzle out. And I've heard this time and time again with the many people that I've done research with and spoken to. So I see that there's a great need of more people to be aware, especially godparents, to be aware of what the role intentions are and how dynamically important that role can be as a supporting role to the parents.
Excellent. Okay, so you've talked a bit about being a godparent and what that role entails. I suppose a pertinent question to ask is, suppose the child is not really interested in reconnecting, or a lot of time has passed.
Mm-hmm. So I address this as well as several other dilemmas, as I call them, in my guidebook. Uh, what I do get the godparents to bear in mind is firstly looking at the age of the child. If the child is between 6 and 13, you have a better chance of connecting with them. If they're 13 and above, it can be a bit more difficult. This is because children between 6 and 13 are at primary school, and the environment and everything that surrounds the primary school experience is very different from that of a secondary school. Parents are often usually bringing the children to school. At primary school, they know each other's children. The parents know each other's children. The parents know the parents of the children as well. They meet, congregate in the playgrounds and on the premises at drop off and pick up times. That environment is all lost and disappears in the secondary. You have the new starters who, for maybe a week or two, the parents go along with them just so that they're familiar with the route of how to get to school. But then from thereafter, they travel to school by themselves. They feel a lot more independent. Don't get me wrong, they probably can travel to school sometimes, to primary school by themselves as well, but the experience changes a lot more in secondary school, and their independence comes in. They feel that they're grasping things more, and therefore connecting with a child that's that age as an adult who's not been in their life for some time can be a bit more tricky, a bit more difficult, but not impossible. Mm-hmm.
Excellent. Okay, so I mean, a big question to ask, and one to really reflect on, is what would you say is the real role of a godparent? Because to some degree, I would say some people don't know,
Mm-hmm.
or it's become lost on them. So, what is the real role of a godparent?
There's actually several roles um, of a godparent, but it depends on which lens we want to look at it from. If we want to look at it from the lens of when it was first introduced, when the concept was created, it's very very different from how it's seen and observed today.
Okay.
Yeah, so when it first was introduced, and it comes from the Catholic roots.
Mm.
The Catholic Church, introduced this. It was very much the type of role where a godparent or godparents were the spiritual guides of the
Right.
child. They were there to bring about, the focus and the centering of their spiritual life, helping them to know and understand who God is, know about Christ, the Bible, their prayer life development, and all things spiritual.
Okay.
Their role was very much centered around that aspect.
Mm.
Yeah, there's more I can say on that as well, but I'll leave some things for you to discover in the book. But bringing things fast forward in today, to today, you have godparents who are on a whole spectrum, whether they're actually fully Christian. Some of them are non-Christian. Some are actually of a different faith persuasion.
Yeah.
And so the focus is very different. But to answer the question about what is the role of a godparent,
Mm.
For me, the role of a godparent is that they're there as a fantastic supporting role. They are there to be a positive reinforcement to the child. A good example of this is maybe you can identify this with yourself, Darren.
Yeah.
Um, if you think of a time where someone close to you has probably given you advice and said, you should try this, try that,
Mm.
this, that, the other, and stuff, and you've kind of thought to yourself, well, you know what, maybe yeah, it's a good idea, but I'll get round to it. But then somebody completely different um, gives you that same advice on that same issue, that same subject,
Mm.
and because that person has said what the other person has said to you before, it kind of reinforces it in your mind. It echoes what they've said, and you think, you know what, because this person has said that same thing to me, there must be something in it. Let me look into it. Let me take action. Let me do this very thing.
Yeah.
I experienced this for many years, between my wife and my best friend. Um, and, whenever my wife would ask me to do something and I didn't get around to doing it, but then my best friend mentioned that same thing,
Mm.
totally unaware that my wife had mentioned it to me. And I would then act on it. Of course, my wife would say, "Oh, why is it you're waiting for somebody else to tell you before you take action?"
Right. Yeah. Common thing.
And then he would say the same thing as well. Why come you don't believe me when I tell you certain things and you're waiting for somebody else to tell you? But
Mm.
it's the what I realize is that it's the reinforcement of that information, and I want godparents to have that same kind of power and that kind of influence in the lives of children, because there are many parents who are trying to do their best. There are many single parent mothers, if you like, and in some case fathers as well, who are trying to do their best, but sometimes their best doesn't seem to be enough.
Mm.
And if the parent has the child and they're telling the child, you need to clean up your room, tidy up after yourself, clear the table, wash the dishes, do the ironing, catch up with your homework, make sure you study for this, and so on and so forth. These are good things that the parents are telling the children to do because it's for their best interest.
Yeah.
But they're just not receiving it, they're taking it that the parents are nagging them.
Mm.
But the moment that another adult, can say the same thing to them lovingly, um, they'll take heed and they'll think, you know what, my mom's been telling me this
For
for
a while.
years, and
Yeah.
for a good while. Now that you've said this to me, you know what, I'm gonna, and that's what I want, and that's what I believe happens as well psychologically. It's a powerful thing.
That's important. So it sounds to me like it's about relationship, and as you said, that extra supportive role, a confidant as well, but
Yeah.
not where familiarity breeds any contempt, but one of respect and trust.
Absolutely,
Oh,
absolutely.
okay. So, if you can just remind us again, how many godparents have you? Sorry, godchildren have you got?
Currently, I have 7 official godchildren. I've adopted or taken one under my wing unofficially as well. Um, but yeah, seven godchildren.
Okay. So that is quite a responsibility. How do you nurture all those sort of relationships, and is there much variance between the nurturing?
Well, that's a great question, and this is what I put into the book as well, because I really want godparents to recognize the importance and to not only see the importance but take action. It's something that can be done, and it can be done practically. Um, Bearing in mind that my book was written and the idea was, it's taken me 4 years to put this book together, and it was, of course, done before the COVID lockdown
Okay.
situation. So everybody's lives was busy. We was, running here, there, everywhere. So my strategy was very simple.
Mm.
When you're getting in contact with your godchildren, do it once a month. Connect with them at least once a month. If you're able to do it more than that, that's a bonus. But at least once a month. Simply pick a day. If I was to say to you, pick a number between 1 to 28,
Mm.
any number you want to pick. Once you've chosen that number, let that be the number, the date that you contact your child, your godchild, sorry, each month. The date that I contact my godchildren is on the 2nd of each month. So that's the first thing. The second thing is try and have have a conversation with them that lasts no longer, no shorter than 5 minutes. Have a 5 minute conversation at minimum with your godchild each month, provided they're of age that you can speak to them like that.
Mm.
If they're younger than 5, 6, so the conversation is a bit more difficult for them to engage in, um, then substitute that conversation with the parents of the child. Catch up with the parents, say, look, how's Jonathan doing? How's Mary getting on in school? What do they need for school? When is their next school play? Uh, you know, what's their development like? How they, what are they allergic to? Use it as an opportunity to get to know more about your godchild. Yeah.
Excellent.
Hmm.
So just sort of sounding that back, it's about having a sort of regular, scheduled, um, consistent input,
Hmm.
and secondly, having a timely but appropriate dialogue with them.
Yes.
Also feeding into the parents and sort of checking up on that and making sure all the information with your godchild is on point, and sort of just supporting and checking it all on both ends.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I've got a couple of chapters within my book. Um, One called appropriate behaviour. So making sure that the conversations that you have with the children are that you're mindful of what you should and shouldn't be discussing.
Okay.
Um, with your godchildren.
Mm.
And there's also a chapter where I talk about the art and beauty of conversation. So
Wow.
I put some ideas in there on what you can talk about and how you can um, phrase your questions, and so on and so forth. And that one leads actually into a whole section of monthly conversation suggestions that you can have with the godchild as well.
That sounds fantastic.
Mm.
Okay. So I suppose in kind of arriving where you're at now, in having sort of formulated your books, what sort of particular models or methods are you working with, or any sort of additional resources you use?
Additional resources would be books, other books, really.
Mm.
There's a chapter in my book, one called Book Recommendations, another one called Audio
Excellent. Yeah.
Recommendations. I have been through dozens of books on this journey um, of writing this book, and these are books that have helped me to grow in a number of different areas, whether it's on spirituality and understanding God, the Bible, Jesus,
Mm.
books on personal development. So people who are ambitious or want to know how to achieve their goals. Um, there's books on uh, you, you know health, on financial management, a number of different books that I've gone through, um, relationships and the like, and I list them in the book recommendations and in the audio recommendations as well.
Excellent. So you got your sources within the books
Mm.
for anybody else that wants to check up on the references for those additional resources, and gain more grounding as well on those additional resources. Okay.
Absolutely.
Um, so what other areas of works or topics would you say you're focusing on?
Uh, in addition to the reconnection of Godparent and Godchild, um, this whole book is actually one in a series of three.
Okay.
Yeah, so the next book is going to be the next direction I'll be going in, and that will be focusing on the parents, um, whether they're soon to be mother or father, or they've had the child but they're yet to name who they want as their godparents. That book will be focusing on looking at what qualities to look for in a godparent when you're making a selection. Many godparents that are around today were simply chosen because they were a close work colleague or a good friend, um, and that's not good enough.
Hmm.
Really, for selecting a godparent, there are definitely qualities of a particular nature that one should be looking at or considering before naming um, their godparents. So that's my next agenda.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty vital because I have godparents for my children, and some of them I'm just not in contact with, so we know how that goes. And you're right, as that third voice into their life,
Mm-hmm.
obviously with that role comes the due diligence, comes the character,
Mm-hmm.
comes the empathy,
Mm-hmm.
comes the care, comes the consideration.
Mm-hmm.
And also your values need to be where they need to be in order so
Absolutely.
that you are a role model and you're training up a younger role model,
That's
and we
right.
can pass this down.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So next question would be, what change would you say you've already seen your books, your focus and your development achieve? What type of feedback have you had?
Amazing feedback. I mean, it's just been really, it's almost like fuel for me, because when I hear about how dynamic, you know, of an impact that this has made in people's lives, it really just kind of makes me feel proud that this has been brought to their attention.
Mm,
You know, for example, after hearing my talk on this, you know, a young lady was inspired to get in contact with her goddaughter, who was 10 at the time, and you know, after connecting with her, the two of them became almost inseparable. You know, they spoke almost every day, and every weekend they would meet up. And for me, that was just fantastic, just to know that there's that impact. Um, you know, can you imagine a 10-year-old child, young girl, who gets to connect with another adult, another female,
mm,
um, to be a role model to her on that level where they're connecting and speaking, you know, frequently. For me, that just says that, you know, it's not that they don't get on with their mother. I don't know what the situation is about their relationship, but to know that there's another outlet for that child is amazing. I mean, if you just take the time to think of what the consequences are, you know, what can happen with a child that feels that they're not being heard,
mm,
they can turn around to do. I mean, it doesn't even bear thinking about.
mm.
You know, they might want to turn to a gang because the gang seem to be showing them more love and appreciation. They might want to self harm,
Yeah.
you know, and or worse. So knowing that there's someone else that loves them, cares for them, and is willing to be there for them and to listen to them, which is very important. Many youngsters, many children just want to be listened to,
Mm,
uh, and if I can equip godparents, you know, enough to say, look, be a good listener, because it's therapeutic to them. You
mm.
know, um, some of them, they can have anger issues, and it's bottled up inside because, you know, God forbid, the mother, father not listening to the child.
Right.
If a godparent can come into this, you know, on the scene and be that confidant, be that person who maturely knows how to handle the situation of being confidential, but you know, knowing their boundaries and the limits in that dynamic, it can be transformational
Mm.
for the child. I've had feedback from a gentleman in Canada.
Wow.
You know, he was in Canada and he said, look, this is, you know, he was lured into my pick a number approach, and he picked the number 7. So he said, okay, all right, so I see where you're going with this. So he got in contact with his godchildren, and he's got 6 godchildren, and he was
Mm.
able to get in contact with 4 of them. Um, and after the second month of doing this, he you know, got in contact with me and said, look, let's speak, because right now it's just been amazing. Like, me speaking, connecting with them has been the, you know, best thing that's happened to them. I then later on had a webinar on his birthday,
Mm.
and while we was in that webinar, you know, he let us know that one of his godchildren had literally just sent him a happy birthday message, and before, you know, before this time, he wouldn't have got a message from them. So it just shows that the relationship builds, and just, you know, just grows the more that we're consistent in what we're doing.
Our approach. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's just one of several. There was another one where, you know, she's got in, well, it wasn't even her getting in contact because of the book. It was more the mother of the child reaching out to her godparent out of the blue, saying, "Look, so and so's father has just died. She's taking it rough. Are you able to connect?" Thankfully, this godparent has been on the journey with me, so she's aware of these different skills and stuff like that. But
Yes.
where this was probably out of her depth, she was able to speak with me and to get some suggestions on how to handle it. And again, I told her, be there for her and be a good listener. Because there might be things that the child might be bottling up inside that they want to get out. So yeah, it's been I've had so many wonderful positive stories.
Absolutely brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, as far as avoiding, because I know you've spoken it before,
Mm-hmm.
youth on youth violence, murder. You said marching is not enough. It's not solely enough.
Mm-hmm.
So, what minimal things can people look to do and implement for change? And what will the books provide as a bit of a sort of a basis for anything like that?
Well, yeah, the books actually just provide the practical angle of what can be done. Um, when crime takes place, this crime that's affecting our young people, they are in a place where they're so numb to the value of life. They're numb to what people want to say because they're so bent up on retaliation, their anger. They're angry, and all these kind of things are taking place. Marching really, for me, doesn't have an impact on them because the marching is more for the adult to feel like they're doing something. And then when the marching is done, and they've got all their energies out because it's been a therapeutic exercise for them.
Yeah.
No disrespect to those who are who march, um, and feel that that they're doing something. But we've seen it time and time again that after the marching has taken place, the knife crime still continues. Um, so my thing is, we need a practical approach, um, something that reaches them. In other words, it's not about pointing the fingers to say we want more police on the streets, which was some parents I've heard saying that we need more police on the streets, but then we're saying that with one hand, but then there's another community saying that they're doing the stop and search and they're arresting us and they're brutalizing us and so on and so forth. It's like, well, how do we get this balance right? Do we want the police or do we not want the police? There's a conflict there, and then we're saying that the government is taking down youth centers, and there's this constant pointing of the finger of what should be done and who should do it and where we need more people and so on. And
Accountability.
my thing is saying, instead of pointing the finger, the same person that's pointing the finger, point those fingers back at yourself and say, okay, look, what is there that I can do? What can I do? And this is why I'm really so wholeheartedly and passionately pursuing this mission, because I want everybody to look at themselves and say, what can I do? Who can I influence? Who can I reach? Who can I speak to? And there are many young people that we know. It doesn't have to be a godparent, godchild relationship, because the same strategies that I'm discussing and that I disclose in the book are the same strategies that will work with aunts and uncles connecting with their nieces and nephews. It's the same strategy that will work with a person who wants to be a mentor or some kind of other help or assistance or coach to their neighbor's child or their friend's children. It's just about getting the adults in a place where they say, you know what, I see the knife crime taking place on TV. I don't know who those children are and I can't reach them, but I don't want you to reach them. I want their godparents and their aunts and uncles to reach them because they have a better chance than a police officer, than a social worker, or the like. I want everybody, every adult, to say to themselves, who is in my sphere of influence? How many godchildren do I have? How many nieces and nephews do I have that I can reach? How many of my neighbors or friends' children are in my sphere of influence that I can apply these strategies to? Simple as that. And it will have a dynamic impact on a psychological and emotional level that I believe would really be effective. Really be effective.
Excellent.
Mm.
Okay. So in closing, what I want to ask is how can people stay in touch with you or keep abreast of what you're doing? You know, what type of platforms are you on?
Okay, so yeah, I'm not all over the place at the moment, but you can find me on my YouTube channel, Facebook, and also via my website is probably the most direct way of reaching me, which is my name, Martin Stevens with a V, martinstevens.me.
martinstevens.me.
hmm You can sign up and subscribe to my newsletters on there. Um, you can also follow me on Facebook either under my name or under my social enterprise, which is called Progression and Development.
Fantastic. Excellent. Well, Martin, thank you very much for accommodating us with your time for this interview, but most of all, for being inspirational, being motivational, putting in the work that you have on these books, making it available for the community, the general public, for wanting to see change, and for producing those methods and showing those formulas within the book and continuing to inspire. Look forward to doing an interview with you again at some other stage.
Okay, sure. There's so much more that I can cover, so that'll be my delight. Um, whenever whenever it's good and convenient for yourself, we can go down that road. That's fine.
Yeah, we'll perhaps look at some other topics next time, or maybe even get you to go through maybe a couple of points from the book. I think that's always brilliant with an author,
Mm-hmm.
to really sort of just elaborate. And obviously I would advise people and recommend that people get the books
Mm-hmm.
and support Martin as well. We need financial support, and purchasing of what we're putting out in the community for change and for the better.
Mm. And if
Okay.
I can elaborate on that point,
Yep.
um, very important. Uh, in purchasing these books, you're actually helping to support me to continue the work. Why should you purchase these books? Because purchasing these books or spending £20 um, is far better uh, an investment than hearing that a mother has lost their child, or that your godson, goddaughter has died, and now the family has to fork out thousands of pounds for a funeral,
Hmm.
on top of bereaving and grieving the loss of their child. So, for that reason, if we can save children by purchasing a book, for me that's a no-brainer, and I want to impress it on everyone's hearts to say, look, let me make this investment by purchasing this book and developing myself to a place where I can be a great role model to these youngers in my sphere of influence, because there are challenges out there. Uh, these youngsters, millennials that are born, um, this side of, um, you know, the age bracket, um, they are in a different world. They have, they listen to different music. They have, they're brought up in a time when internet is all they know, whereas the adults that are around them would have known life before the internet. They would have known life before, ordering things on the internet, on eBay, and these, there's
Hmm.
a generational gap, and these are the things that I also pack into the book to say, look, you, in order to better reach them, you've got to understand them and see where they're coming from. Tune into what type of music that they're into, find out what they're into, tap into, listen into it, so you can have a conversation with them on that level. Because if you can't connect with them and understand their artists or the music that they listen to, they won't listen to you, or that they won't feel that they're connected to you. And if they feel disconnected to you on that kind of level, your chances of reaching them is going to be even more difficult as well. Uh, and I also have, which we can probably go into another time, in the back of my book, a directory of over 60 different organizations that provide products and services. So should a godparent, aunt or uncle feel like they want to help their godchild, but they're not sure how they can help them, depending on what different situations or circumstances that they have, there's help. There's numbers that you can call. There's organizations that you can get in contact with, either for yourself and your own development, or to send maybe the youngster to an organization that works with young people, so that they can up their skills, that they can become, live healthier lifestyles, that they can get, come out of gang culture. So many different things. I'm telling you, this resource is really jam-packed with gems, jewels, strategies, tips, and everything that our communities need to get our community back in line, on track, so that we can effectively be the community that raises children.
Excellent. If you can just say the name of the books again in closing.
Sure. Raising Up Role Models. Raising Up Role Models. It's also available on the Tolson's website, tolsons.co.uk. That's TULSANS. Just type in Raising Up Role Models. You'll also find my books on their website as well. Purchase it today, if not this week. And once you've done that, please leave a review, and that will help to generate more activity, more people. You'll be playing your part. You'll be making a great contribution and become a hero in your own right.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Martin.
Thank you.
Take care.